You know, we're always looking for different things to do with the game animals that we take each year as far as preparing them, processing them. One thing that I got into kind of in a big way the last couple of years is making my own homemade jerky. Now, I don't have a dehydrator, I don't have a smoker, so I researched some oven recipes for jerky, and let me tell you, it is dynamite stuff. It involves using some liquid smoke to get that smoke flavor, but it's easy. It takes a little bit of time, but it's well worth it. I've got half a breast from a wild turkey here that I shot last week, and this makes great jerky, these breasts. And I've left a little bit of the silver skin on here just to help hold it together, hold the pieces together. Once I start slicing them, once you put them in the marinade, it softens them. Had a little problem with it falling apart as you cook it, because you're slow cooking it for a long time, like 200 degrees in the oven. So I leave the silver skin on there. Another thing I do now, this is all trimmed up and washed. I took care of this earlier, is I'm going to cut this across the grain. Here's the grain. I'm going to cut it this way, because that also helps hold that meat together as it's drying in the jerky form. I don't want these pieces of jerky to be real big, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this breast in half, just like that. Now, I'm going to take this one first and slice it, again, across the grain. And how thick you cut it is kind of an individual thing. We like ours cut a little thicker, so now that it's all cut up, I got to grab a couple things. First, gallon Ziploc bag, then my ingredients. Got my Worcestershire, the soy sauce, liquid smoke, garlic powder, celery salt. I use that instead of the onion powder. It's got great flavor. And paprika, because paprika's got a little bit of spice and it's got that smoky flavor. So here's what I'm going to do. Take this Ziploc bag and add the Worcestershire. Now this is going to take quite a bit. The recipe said up to a cup. I don't use quite a cup because I've got a half a breast here. I'm not making a fair amount of jerky, but it's not a lot of jerky. So next I'm going to use the soy sauce. Again, I hold back a little bit on that. And celery salt. You notice my measurements. Couple tablespoons of that. Couple tablespoons of a garlic powder. 1 tablespoon of the paprika, because again, it's got a little bit of spice to it. You don't want to overdo it with the paprika. And finally, we liquid smoke. Now, liquid smoke is something that everything I've read about it, they urge you to use it sparingly. If a little bit is good, more isn't better, because it's very overwhelming. If you've ever used liquid smoke, you know what I'm talking about. So 2 tablespoons, and that's about what I've got left in this bottle. 2 tablespoons is great plenty. Perfect. And we get that good and mixed up. And our turkey pieces are going right in there. Another thing, the recipes that I researched just about all called to putting this in a bowl and then having to stir it. But I've found that using these Ziploc bags, the reason I like to use these Ziploc bags is you're able to flatten out your pieces of meat in there, whether it's venison, beef, turkey, chicken, whatever you're making your jerky, using for your jerky meat. You can flatten this out and it all gets in the marinade. See how nice that is? It's all soaking up that marinade. There's none of it that's not in the marinade. Well, if you stack it in a bowl, you may have some pieces that don't get quite as much marinade as other pieces. And trust me, when it's done, you'll be able to tell. One other thing that I've discovered is I don't put my salt, my seasoning salt, in the bag because it gets a little too diluted. What I'll do is I'll put this on the rack, on the pan that I'm going to put in the oven and slow cook, and then I'll put my seasoning salt on the top of the meat. So that's it. Now we just have to refrigerate this for 3 to 4 hours. That's what it calls for. Personally, I like to leave it overnight. And I did one last night, so I'm going to put this one in and grab the other one. All right, I've got my pan now and my rack that I'm going to set the jerky on to go into the oven. But you'll notice that I used aluminum foil in this pan. That is extremely important because this is going to be in the oven for 3 to 4 hours and it's going to be a low heat. But the stuff that drips off the jerky as it's drying, if you don't put this tin foil down, this pan can be a real problem to clean afterwards. So make sure you use this aluminum foil on here. Okay, now we're ready. We're going to start laying out these pieces of jerky that have been marinating since yesterday onto this rack. And they're going to be kind of tight because I have a feeling this rack is going to be rather full. And they will shrink down as they cook, of course. They will shrink down, so there'll be plenty of room in the end. That's it. We got them all laid out. Got them all good and flat on the rack. Now, here's the next step. I said earlier that I don't put my salt into the marinade because I want to have a little more control of it. So what I do is I wait until it's laid out, and then I take this is just a venison rub. It's a mixture of seasoning salt, some garlic salt, some other salts and spices that I make myself. And I just lightly salt this. Now remember, I said I didn't use any salt previously, so this isn't too much. There we go. That's it. It's going to go into the oven at 200, and hopefully within about, I'll check it at 3 hours, and we'll see where it is from there. And now we've come to my favorite part of this jerky making process, and that's taking the finished product out of the oven. It's been in there about, almost close to 4 hours on 200. I do like to check it every once in a while to make sure that it is drying out and that we're not overcooking it, and this is perfect, just perfect. It's dried, but what I do now is I leave it right on the pan and I let it cool completely. And it'll dry a little bit more actually and get a little more of that jerky texture. It's beautiful, just beautiful. And that's the process from beginning to end. It's something to do on a rainy day or even a nice day because this stuff is delicious. And we're going to enjoy this.